There are advantages to working with a table if you work with formulas in the table. In this worksheet called Employees Table, I'm going to scroll to the right and zoom in with the Control key and the mouse wheel. And let's say that we want to calculate a new salary here for column L based on the existing salary in column J and the percent of increase in cell N1. Now, when you write formulas, you certainly can, and you're allowed to, and maybe even it's efficient for you to click on cells. So I could type J2, but I'm going to click on it. And if this were not a table, we'd simply see J2. But look what happens here as I click cell J2. It refers to that entry as one of the salary entries. Might be a little bit disconcerting at first. I need to multiply this by percent of increase, so put in the asterisk for multiplication. Click cell N1, and we see that notation, pretty lengthy. Now, the concern here is if we want to use this formula, as we're going to be copying it down column L, this needs to be an absolute address. But the notation style here automatically means it's an absolute address. We don't have to worry about that. To complete the formula, we put in a plus, and we're going to add it on to the existing salary, that's J2. We could write the formula in different ways, but no matter how we wrote the formula, we would need to be referring to cell J2 and N1 in different ways. But by clicking on those cells, we see how the formula is being built. Now, as I press enter, look what happens. The formula automatically gets copied downward. And you can certainly check the math on these. These are accurate. But the notation style looks different. And as we click here and perhaps double click to see it larger, it certainly does look different. Now, I don't want to dissuade you from using this necessarily, and yet at the same time, I do understand it looks kind of strange, and you might be in a situation where you have to explain it to others, so maybe it's not so good. If somehow or other it doesn't appeal to you, or you think you can't work with it very smoothly, write the formula with the actual cell addresses as you type them. So I'm going to redo this formula with equal. I'm going to type J2, asterisk, and then type N1, and that needs to be made an absolute address if we want to copy it downward. So I'll press the F4 key to make it an absolute address, and then plus, and I'll type J2. And as I press enter, it will change the entry here in terms of its formula, same result, and it will be copied downward. Now, if you work with other kinds of formulas off this data, and you possibly are outside of the actual table itself, I'm going to go over here to the right just temporarily, make the column wider, and show you a formula that will allow us to use this labeling technique in a slightly different way. So I'm going to enter AutoSum automatically here. And I certainly don't want to be adding up that data there, but I want to get data from the table. So if I type T right now, what happens is we see range names that pop up, and one of them is a table. Now, if we have other tables in this workbook, we might see a table 1, table 2, table 3, so you might have to go figure out which one is which first. In this workbook, there's only one table, so there it is. So if I click Table 1 and tab it into place, I now want to get to the fields, and I'll press left bracket. On most keyboards, that's just to the right of the letter P, no Shift key. And that brings up the various field names. We can see some of them already at the top of our screen. And I want to choose salary. There it is right there, and I'll tab it into place. And all I need to do now is put in the right bracket and enter. So I've added the salaries. So it remains to be seen how well you adjust to this style or whether you actually want to use those, but it does allow us, and I think it's most important, is that it allows us to automatically copy the formula downward. In fact, we don't even do the act of copying, it does this for us. So a different approach there to writing formulas, but an advantage because they're automatically copied if you use this table scheme.